Hi, everyone. This is Ken Drack from Soft Labs. Welcome to today's webinar on moving from Selenium Grid to the cloud, a real-life story with Anshul Sharma from Emmi Solutions. Anshul has a practical story on how she migrated testing from an in-house grid to the cloud in an effort to support their move to DevOps. So she's a great speaker and has a real interesting story for us this morning. My name is Ken Drachnick, and I'll be moderating today's session. The Q&A panel down in the lower right is the best place to submit questions, and we'll have time during the webinar, and at the end of the webinar, we'll save about 10 minutes or so to answer questions, and we'll ask questions during the process as they come up and are pertinent to the slides that Anshul is presenting. If you have issues like audio issues or problems with WebEx, please put those in the chat area, and our producer can take care of those and answer some of those issues as well. But for questions about the webinar in particular, would you please put those in the Q&A panel? Due to privacy concerns, you're not going to see anyone in the attendees panel, but you can rest assured we have hundreds of folks who are attending today's webinar, and we will be recording the session today. So if you have colleagues who are not going to be able to make this session due to time zone constraints and things, rest assured a couple of days we will send out the slides and the webinar recording to you so that you can share that with your folks. Okay, what I'd like to now is get started, and I'll pass it over to Anshul to walk us through the webinar.
Hi guys, welcome to the webinar. Thank you, Ken, for a generous introduction. Today I will be sharing my experience, learning, and challenges while moving from Selenium Grid to the cloud. Before I start with that, I'll talk a little bit about Emmi. I work as a lead automation engineer at Emmi Solutions. So what does Emmi do? Well, Emmi develops the interactive patient engagement solutions that helps people take active roles in their health and well-being. In terms of general language, what I really want to say is, have you ever had an anxiety feeling about a procedure or a treatment you are going to have with a medical practitioner? All the details which doctor provides you about how, what, and the precautions to take before and after the treatment. People do forget that after they came home. So what if the doctor prescribes you a program which you can watch at your convenience on your handheld devices, desktop, or share it with your family and friends, or you can watch it together with them? It is really important to make sure that what the product we deliver to the patients or the medical practitioners, it's highly and thoroughly tested, because it's a matter of your health, and it's really important to make sure that that software works properly on multiple devices, OS, and browsers. Here is an image what you can see in the picture, how any program looks to an individual, which is tailored for an individual specifically. So that's a little bit information what we do at Emmi. So this is me, a picture of me. I lead the automation efforts and the testing strategy here at Emmi, and help people identify what are the testing strategies we have to make across for different kind of product lines. So let's start with the webinar's agenda. So in order to start with, I will give a little bit introduction about the Selenium WebDriver. That's what we are using here for automation. Selenium Grid. What are the needs and problems with Selenium Grid? The benefits of moving towards the cloud platform. I will be talking about Soft Labs because that's the cloud platform which I chose here at Emmi. The really good tip in this agenda is the best practices and advantages when you are moving towards the cloud platform. And the most interesting part is the demo. So I have created a small demo about how things work on cloud, how you can leverage the cloud services. And at the end, or in between, you can have questions and answers. So let's roll out and start. What is Selenium WebDriver? If you guys can see a picture on the right-hand side, Selenium WebDriver is an interface which interacts with your web browser and mimics the human action. So in a way, you can actually automate the repeatable tasks which a user is doing manually so that it can be done in a faster way. The Selenium WebDriver interface interacts with the browser using a driver. So, for example, we have a Mozilla Firefox, and it interacts with the Firefox driver. For IE, the IE driver. All these drivers are being maintained by the respective browser. It's not like that you have to maintain those web drivers. It's being taken care by the Mozilla or Microsoft for IE or Google for Chrome. So what is Selenium Grid then? Well, we saw that you can automate the tasks using the Selenium WebDriver by mimicking the human actions and converting the regular tasks using automation. But how do you run them on Selenium Grid, or why do you need Selenium Grid? Well, as you can see in this picture, you can see a node and hub combination. Think of it in a very simple way. Hub is a master CPU which directs the request to each different node. Nodes can be treated as slaves, which is each node has its own configuration. Depending on where do you want to run that test, the hub directs that request to the appropriate node. For example, in node 1, I'm running the test on Android, and in node 3, it's Firefox and Ubuntu. With the help of Selenium Grid, it helps you in reducing the batch processing time of your execution, distributes your test execution, and helps in running the parallel tests. So far, so good. We saw that you were able to automate tests using Selenium WebDriver. You were able to run them on Selenium Grid. So what are the problems that why we can't use Selenium Grid? Here's one of the pictures I have put about the grid console, which we were using before at Emmi. You can see there is some browsers and configuration on different machines which we were using. This is just for information purpose. You can have multiple configuration and nodes, which you can distribute a test across different nodes. So what are the problems when you run the Selenium Grid? Here is an image of an iceberg, which you can see at the very top is what you really see, the benefits of running the Selenium Grid is 10%, but the problem lies beneath, which is 90% of the times. So let's talk about it one by one. First one is cost. When I talk about cost, it's the cost of making sure that you have the right infrastructure in place, you have the different nodes and hubs being set up, single point of failure. As you have seen in the picture back there, when I talked about hub and node, if the hub goes down, then you don't have any failover plan. So it's a single point of failure if you're using Selenium Grid. But you can anytime scale that hub and have a load balancer and use multiple hubs to direct those requests. But then again, it costs you maintenance and time activity. High maintenance. When I talk about high maintenance, it's not just about maintaining or adding more nodes. It's more about upgrading the machines with antivirus, as those can be physical machines or even the virtual machines which you're using in your company. Making sure that you have the right WebDriver in place, the right version of WebDriver. If you have to add support for different browser versions, then you need to add that during the setup, or you make sure that you have the right browsers, which is being used. Either you downgrade the browsers or upgrade the browsers on different machines. So that really costs you the high maintenance. The last one is my favorite, flakiness of the test. I have had this experience of failing tests on Internet Explorer browser lot many times, and it is not because the application was not working fine on Internet Explorer. It's because the browser got hung on a machine, specifically IE. So generally, when you run the test on Selenium Grid, it was during the end of the day, the Jenkins job used to run, and then the next day morning you used to come back and see what is the results of the automation test. So literally, we have to log into the test log and see like why the application failed. Is it because the browser got hung, there was an application issue, or the automation scripts need to be reworked? This really becomes complicated when you are not looking at the test running live as you went home and you saw the results next day. But when you are running it on Selenium Grid Live, I actually had to log into different machines to see which machine is running the IE browser version of which platform, and then see why it got hung. So then what is the solution?
So I think we've got a poll here now, folks, that if you look in the lower right-hand side where the Q&A panel is, there's some poll questions. What is the most challenging thing for a QA engineer? If you guys could take a look at this, give us a response. A is running a test across a variety of browsers and OSs. B is testing faster and publishing the results of testing. C is maintaining the infrastructure and regularly upgrading browser versions, Selenium jars on VMs. Or D is really all of the above. Anshul, while people are answering those questions at the poll, the question came in around, you showed your internal grid where you had a number of browsers and operating systems, and I assume most of those were on Windows. But on Macs, you can't really emulate those, right? So you had to set up your own Mac grid in order to test Safari on Apple?
Yeah, that's correct, Ken. You had to set up that in the grid. The picture which I showed was just a sample of how you can set up, and it has a Safari and Mac, so you need to set up a grid for Mac as well.
Terrific. It looks like we have the results of the polls here. 60% say all of the above, which I think is pretty typical of what we hear from prospects and customers here at Soft Labs, that the maintenance and uptime and taking care of their own grid tends to be a lot of work, and not necessarily what companies are paying their engineers to do, which is create apps and make them better, rather than support infrastructure.
Yeah, that's correct. So when I see the responses, I was expecting all of the above will be the majority of the cases, because the time and effort it takes for a QA engineer to create automation scripts, we don't want to spend much effort on maintaining the infrastructure, regularly upgrading that, and making sure that system is up. But it's more like how fast you can publish those test results and testing, making sure that we run across the test across different browsers and OSs. For any software product to be delivered, it needs to be thoroughly tested across different platforms. So, yeah, these are the challenges which we all face while we are doing automation, specifically about covering different browsers and OS and making sure the test runs faster. So I will be talking about all these problems, what I have faced in real time and how I have resolved them, and leverage the cloud services by making sure that I'm not spending too much time on the infrastructure and the upgrade of the system. So let's talk about the solution of this problem. Here in the image, you can see there are a lot of solution providers which you can choose for leveraging the cloud services, Soft Labs, Browser Stack, Custom Bot, and Gridlastic. I personally use Soft Labs because it is really good in terms of support, and I really like the way the documentation works, and it was really fast and easy for me to implement using the documentation. I didn't have a hard time, but there are other solution providers out there in the market for the same solution. So let's take a look at how you can actually leverage these cloud services and how these are going to benefit you. So the first one is cost. When you move towards the cloud services, you will save on the resources who manage your VMs. It can be your IT department, it can be the QA engineer, so you're saving on the cost of the machine, infrastructure, as well as people. And you can easily leverage the cloud services. Scalability. You don't have to worry about how many VMs you need to buy in advance, or how many VMs are required with different configurations. You can just spin up as many VMs as you want with different configurations, depending on how you are leveraging the cloud services. If you are running maybe thousands of tests per day, then you have an estimation of like, okay, I will be needing maybe hundreds of VMs. So depending on how you have configured and how many automation tests you're running, you can scale up without worrying about the actual VMs, what you have available. So you don't have to budget that in advance. System maintenance. We really had this problem of system maintenance where our IT department was maintaining the grid, and once it went down for 2 weeks, and we had no idea what's the problem, why the hub is not working. So no longer you need to worry about the system maintenance, upgrading of antivirus on those machines, or making sure you have the right Selenium web driver on that machine. You don't have to upgrade or downgrade your browsers on a virtual machine. It's all being taken care of. Integration. So I have added a picture of a screenshot. What I'm using Jenkins is my continuous integration tool to run my auto tests. So the cloud services Sauce Labs really integrates well with Jenkins platform. And as you can see, I will be showing the Sauce Labs demo at the end, how I'm running the test. But this is a Jenkins snapshot where you can actually see the commands results in the same window. So you don't have to log into the Sauce Labs dashboard to see the results. You can integrate it with your CI platform, and they do have support for other CI tools like Travis, Bamboo, TeamCity, and Microsoft VSTS, maybe others, but I'm using Jenkins, and that's really a good support with Sauce Labs.
Hey, also, a quick question for you. You talked about the difficulties and kind of some of the issues you had in terms of maintaining a grid and things. At what point did you decide that you needed to switch off an internal grid and go to a cloud service?
So when we started with the automation process, we had very limited scripts and not too much of the automation coverage. But as we started growing, we added more automation scripts around it, and it was getting really difficult when we had to support the customers across different browsers and platforms. And it was getting expensive to spend the time and money on the resources for managing this grid. So we decided to leverage the cloud services, and it's pretty quick to convert your existing code from which was running on grid towards the new platform on cloud. And also, we generate a lot of automation scripts. So I will be talking about how many of the scripts we run on a daily basis and how much we are leveraging in terms of the integration with cloud. So the next one is user control and security. I'm sure whenever we talk about cloud services or moving to a third-party vendor services for hosting or running our tests, the big question comes to everyone's mind, which is user control and security. How secured and controlled that environment is. Well, I have this screenshot from the Sauce Labs architecture diagram. As you can see, there is a customer environment, which is actually can be your local desktop or can be a Jenkins server, where you have the application which you are running. So this diagram talks about all these applications which are in secured zone. For us, we are running the applications which is not public domain right now, and we want to test that, which is behind a firewall called corporate firewall. If we have to run those tests, there is a secure tunnel you can establish between your environment and the cloud services environment in Sauce Labs using Sauce Labs Sauce Connect proxy. When you establish that Sauce Connect, it establishes a secure tunnel between your machine and the cloud services, which is TLS encrypted, and all the communication between the test what you run and the cloud is passed through that tunnel. As soon as you end the test, the tunnel dies, and there is no information which is being shared between these two machines without the tunnel. So whatever information you're passing through this tunnel is secured, and you can access that information in clouds. Every time a new test runs on Sauce Labs, it uses a pristine VM, and you run the test. Towards the end, the test results get stored on the RAM, so those artifacts are not available on RAM, so nobody can access that test data. And it's fully controlled and secured. When you're running the test on Sauce Labs cloud platform, you can actually run the test from your local workspace in debug mode, so you have the control of when you want to put a breakpoint on a certain web element or see like why it is not giving you the right result. It is really easy to do that. This one is my favorite, flexibility. When we move towards cloud, we are coding more and worrying less about the maintenance of the whole grid or the browsers and platforms. Return on investment. This is an actual picture of 2 months back how much we are using. So if you can see in the picture, the test runs by days is almost like 2,000 scripts. So we are running 2K scripts per day and leveraging 10 VMs concurrency and able to utilize this and run our tests in a faster way. So we are getting return on investment by leveraging the cloud services and running the tests in parallel, and thousands of tests run on daily basis, which gives us good automation push, and we are able to release out faster. So here is an actual picture of how the execution happens on SoftLabs. You have your test data on your local machine or the Selenium scripts which are lying on your Windows platform. Whenever you want to run or execute your test, which is running behind a firewall, you open a Soft Connect proxy. It sends the command to the Soft Cloud, and it installs or creates a pristine VM for you for mobile devices or for the browser and platform. Depending on the configuration or the parameters you pass, it sends the appropriate VM and executes your test. Returns back the results for you to share. You can look at the live videos as well as look at the screencast for live videos and commands which get executed. As soon as the test gets completed, the channel dies and all the information related to this is stored in ROM. So there is no way the test data can be stolen. And frankly speaking, it's not anyway a good idea to even use real user data, because I work in a healthcare domain, and for us it's really important to make sure the data is HIPAA compliant, that we cannot use a real patient data or information. Especially also in the banking industry, people don't use the real data, but we are using a fake data for the automation scripts. So let's quickly take a look at the code, how you can move things on cloud using SoftLabs. I have attached a code snippet here, which talks about how you can pass the credentials, or how you can actually activate your cloud platform and run your existing tests on cloud platform. So if you can see the example, I have created a remote WebDriver instance where I'm passing the source URL. The source URL is consisting of a source username and API access key and the whole URL. Let's talk about what this username and API access key means. So as you can see on the left-hand side, a user ID is a login credential which you use to log into your account, and the API access key is a random generated number, which is a combination of alphabets and digits, generally 32 digits. So user ID is used to log into your SoftLabs account and make sure that you are the authenticated user, and you use the access API key, which is used to run against your test against your account. It uploads the resources on the soft storage, and you can download those test results and videos at a later point of time using the same access API key. So at this point, I would like to show a demo of the work I have created for this. Let me share my test start. So here is the auto test which I have created for this webinar. What this test generally do is it goes to Amazon search website, it searches for a term, filters the result, and sees that the right results are returned. I'm using TestNG as for running this test. I'm using Java and Selenium WebDriver, also using the Maven file for the build, and using the cloud services, SoftLabs, to run this test on. So let's quickly take a look at how this test is actually prepared. This is a TestNG file, which you can use JUnit as well to run the test. If you see, I have this test called Amazon Search Test, and I have labeled it as Chrome because I will be running this test in parallel for multiple browsers. So you can see I have a test for a same test which I will be running for different browsers, Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. When you run this test, the thing I'm doing in this is I'm running this test in parallel, so you will see all these three different instances of the test in different browsers. So I have this Amazon test, which is extending base test class, where actually I have this driver, if you can see how I'm running the test on the cloud platform. So pretty much what you set up in your Selenium Grid as desired capability, like browser, version, platform, everything remains same. Job name is something I'm using to identify the job what I'm running on the cloud platform. So for example, if I have this Amazon Search Test Chrome, I want to see this on the cloud, that this test corresponds to which job. So this is parameter I'm passing. Apart from that, you can see the remote web driver instance. Here I'm passing the source username. I'm passing it as an environment variable. And this is my API access key. When you create an account or use the cloud services on Soft Labs, it gives you you need a username and a password to log in. After you log in, you will see an self-generated access API key, which you have to pass here in order to run this test, because this actually lets you see your test results, store your test results, and pull up that information. So let's quickly run this test and see how this does. Let me see if, okay. So this is a softlabs.com test account which I created. I use the beta version. This is something which I like to use. It gives you a nice UI. Here on the dashboard, on the left-hand panel, you can see a dashboard, tunnels. I just talked about tunnels. Like this is only used when you have to run your application which is sequestered behind a firewall, not for all the other cases. So for example, when I have my QA environment tests, which are behind the firewall, I run them on the tunnel using the secure tunnel. Otherwise, for any public domain website, you don't need to run it on tunnel. There are lot of things which you can do. You can run your manual test as well. But let's just first run this test and see how it's working. So I will go ahead and run this as a test engine. Let's see. I hope you guys can see the three instances which got created here when I run the test. You can see 3 concurrent sessions running. I can actually go to each one of them and see how it is working. So I can see the live video of the test on cloud. So it searches on a term shoes and it identifies results. It's a very quick test, so it got completed faster, but we can take a look at it. So I got a success, and I'm still waiting for Firefox to be completed. All of these tests are running on Windows 10, with one is on IE 11, one is on Chrome 36, and this is a different version of Firefox. You can pass whatever different version the software supports are on the latest version and easily run this test. You can see a thunderstorm kind of thing, which is kind of off in this case. If you see, that means that this test ran without Soft Connect proxy, because this test is a public domain website, Amazon, and it's accessible to the outside world, so I don't need to access this with the Soft Connect proxy. So here you can see I ran this test with different commands. It tells you with each click what happened. So this actually maximized the window. So when you click on each of this, you can see what happened to that. During this time, the shoes text was passed. In the watch section, you can see the video recording of the test. So there is no extra coding or anything I have to do to make sure that I have the recording or I'm capturing each screenshot. You can see it searched on shoes, and then it clicks on Um, it verifies that some shoes were returned. I clicked on a 9-wedge brand and it verifies it's the right result. So I ran this test in parallel at the same time, and each test almost ran for like 30 seconds, I guess. Firefox took some time. Could be the internet connection is slow, but yeah, that's the idea, that I'm able to run the same test across different platforms during the same amount of time. So I'm running the test in parallel, distributed against different browsers and different platforms, and I'm able to see the results right here. I go back to my test, and I can even see the results here in the console log, or I can see all the tests passed. So this is when I'm running this test from local. I can run the same set of tests from a PI tool using Jenkins or any other platform, and it will give or tell you the status pass or fail. So I pretty much changed the way I'm calling the driver and passing the different capabilities, browser version and platform, and it detects which browser platform it needs to run the test on, and it runs the test. Let's get back to the...
Hey, so one question for you. You showed when you were running tests on your own grid in-house, did you develop analysis tools like these, or do you have analysis tools that you used, and then how did you kind of share results with your other developers when you found an issue and you wanted to share kind of, hey, this test failed, you need to work on this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ken. When I was using an in-house grid, we were still running them through Jenkins, so we did not have we did not develop a custom API for video recording, but we did had a screenshot which was a custom API we created, which takes a screenshot with each click, and the test failed, and we captured that screenshot, but then the disk space was going full because there were so many screenshots which were being captured. So what we really did was this test failed, and we reported back that, okay, this is in the Jenkins, you can see this test failed, and in the logs you can read that this failed because the element was stale or this element not found. Or it could be because null pointer exception, as this was expected but not expected. So there were a lot of custom error messaging and the custom things we had built around that.
Yeah, there's another question here about Darren asks, sometimes he has to write different versions of a particular test for a specific browser when interacting with tricky DOM elements. He says, I assume you have to do that when using Soft Labs as well?
Can you repeat the question? Actually, it's a little bit breaking.
Yeah, sorry. It says sometimes they have to write different versions of a test for specific browsers when interacting with tricky DOM elements. And I think, the point is in Soft Labs, we're using Selenium to automate tests. So that really doesn't do anything in terms of, handling specific browser actions. So I was wondering if you run into that before when running a test across different browsers, you might have to write a different test for a browser for some specific reason?
Well, this case really happens mostly when you have when you're running the test on IE because of JavaScript, the web element changes. So there are a few solutions to that. Either you can use the different web elements, or there is a feature if you're using a page factory model, then you can use select all. So when I'm using this, I'm using a page factory model to find out the web elements on each page. So I can say find by this, or I can say find by all, and then I declare two elements if I know that web element is behaving different on different browsers. But it has nothing related to how you are running it on the grid or cloud, because it's the way the web element actually is not present. So you can either use data QA hooks, which is a custom data attribute, which you can ask your developers to add to your web element so that the web element doesn't change if you are not using IDs. That's one of the concerns what generally people have when they are dealing with multiple browsers. So you have to just change the different web elements depending on browser.
Great, thanks.
All right. So this is a very light demo of I have shown like how we run the test. There are a lot of best practices which I have used or you can use to make sure that you are able to leverage the parallel execution of tests. So let's talk about those. So I just showed an example of how you can run your test on SoftLab. This is a TestNG example, which I showed you how I have configured it. Here I have identified parallel as false, but because I have just one test here, but if you're running multiple tests, you pass the parallel as true or parallel as test or methods, depending on how you have configured your framework. So let's talk about the best practices to run your test faster on cloud. These are the things which work for me, and I think that these are really good framework design you have to think of before you start automation, or if you have automation in place, which is right now flaky, think of these design patterns if you can accommodate those. So the first one is practice modular-based testing. What this means is you are breaking your test into smaller modules so that they can be easily and cleanly separated and run faster. It's really easy if you have an application, multi-page application. I really support using different page objects for each page because you keep the code clean and separated. For any common functionality, you can use a common class called a base page class, which can be extended with different pages. So use the modular testing approach. The second one is run atomic tests. This really helps me in running the test faster. As I guess we are running right now in one of the smoke test suites, which was taking 38 to 40 minutes. Now it's taking 12 to 14 minutes after we have started running those tests in atomic. What that means is if you have a login test, for example, if you're checking a login of an application, there can be multiple scenarios you can make, like a positive login, a negative login, or you didn't pass any information and log out. Make sure all these different tests are unique and executed separately. Any test should not take more than 2 minutes for execution. If it is taking more than 2 minutes, break the test into different test executions. In that way, you can leverage the parallel execution of tests in a better way, and that will really speed up your test execution cycles. Third one is data-driven testing. You can use keyword-driven or hybrid framework. I am against the hard coding of the test data because that's really become unmanageable when you grow more. You don't want to change hundreds of files when one of your test data change. It's better you can use CSV or Excel for storing your data. I personally use CSV. It's really easy and comma-separated values. And the test in parallel, that really helps. When we were running the test in sequential manner for our automation framework, it was taking a huge amount of time, around an hour to complete one test job. But now it's taking maximum like 15 to 18 minutes at max for running multiple tests. And I guess we're covering almost in 80 tests, 80, in like 12 to 14 minutes using 10 VMs right now. Use page object model. This is again a good approach for your test design patterns while you're running your tests. So the summary is, with the help of leveraging cloud services, we are able to automate more versus we are managing more. Less coding, more results. There are no custom APIs for screencast, live recording, or for taking a snapshot and storing it in a disk space. So there is less coding in all those custom API stuff, just using the SoftLabs REST API to do the results, or using the live video streaming. Speed up the automation development so that you can move towards the continuous integration and deployment in your organization. It helps you in better user and control and debugging because you are able to control the live session, and you can put debug points. Either you can use your local workspace, or if you are running it through Jenkins, you can still debug that. Here's some more information. If you have any questions, you can contact me. This is my email address. For the source code reference, the source code which I created for Amazon search website, I have added it to my GitHub repository. I realized before the demo that some of the tests were failing because Amazon changed their search a little bit, so some of the web elements are failed. I have not updated the code, but yeah, I have just laid down the idea about how the test runs, how you can run it on your cloud services. And here's some information which I used in the slides about the architecture diagram from Soft Labs. Here are more resources which you can use Soft Labs for.
Hey, Anshul, that's great information. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think the Amazon example is why people need to test often and test all the time, because things change so often on these web apps that we find a lot of people are testing, not only during development, but they'll test shopping carts, every hour or every 10 minutes or something like that, because it's so important that those elements always work in the page, and they want to capture those very quickly if they do change. There's some questions here that have come in during the talk, so let me throw a few of these out to you. One question here from Jason is, what is the best way to target multiple browsers on multiple platforms? Do you have to write duplicate test suites using different browsers and version parameters?
No, you don't have to write any duplicate tests. The only thing you have to pass is the different parameters for the same test. Like I showed you in the Amazon example as well. I use the same test. I can show my desktop again and share the insights. So you can see I have this Amazon test called Amazon Search Test. This is one test, and it's taking different parameters. So in the test ng, you will see the Amazon Search Test is one. I'm using the same class everywhere, but I'm passing the different browser platform version. So I'm using a base test class, which is passing all these different parameters and instantiating the web driver. So you don't need to duplicate the test code, just passing different parameters will work.
There's another question here asking about Selenium RC. Did you have to change any scripting for Selenium WebDriver versus using Selenium RC?
I'm not so sure about Selenium RC versus WebDriver. I have not automated or transformed from RC to WebDriver. But for WebDriver, the only change you have to do is extend the Soft Labs REST API and pass the cloud credentials to move from Grid to the cloud.
Yeah, I know with the latest version of Selenium, they're going to deprecate Selenium RC, because that's kind of the older original version of the Selenium remote control. So WebDriver is kind of the standard going forward. There's another question here, how to pull the test results in our test ng in a local machine after running the test cases on Soft Labs. So I think the question's about how do you get and how do you store test results? I don't know why do we need to store the test results are already there on the cloud platform. If you are running it from your local, you can still see the test artifacts all on your Soft Labs dashboard. And if you want to pull them, you can actually go to the link and you can store those results as well. So if I go to this, if I run this test is right there. I can just go ahead and fetch those test results in my local. I can download this video. I can watch it as many times as I want. And in fact, you can, if you find a bug, suppose, let's say this test failed even, you will see test failed, and you can report this and actually link it with your Jira. So there is a facility where you don't have, when you're writing your bug report, you can give a link of this. Or if you are using Jenkins, then you can give Jenkins link. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I think so, and I think thanks for pointing out. Yeah, we have a Jira plugin so that you can instantly share and create a Jira instance and share that with your colleagues as well very quickly, and that'll copy over all the video and log information into that Jira ticket as well. Question here, if we do a recording, will it impact the performance of tests in Soft Labs? Anshul, have you ever seen any impact of the recording? I think the recording is just, are by themselves in the background and don't really impact tests, do they?
I have not seen any impact with the recording because think of it as like when you are running your test on a virtual machine. If the virtual machine is on a recording mode, it will keep itself in recording. If we are recording this webinar, so it's something which is already live and you are recording at the back end. So it doesn't impact the performance. But yeah, there is definitely a delay if you're running your test on your LAN versus if you're running it on a virtual machine, which is on cloud. But if you're running your test in parallel, I believe it doesn't really matter.
Terrific. One question came in is, can you talk about test coverage and browser coverage and how maybe you expanded or how you changed your philosophy of testing across more or different browsers when you switched from your internal grid to, say, Soft Labs?
Sure. So earlier when we were using in-house grid, as you can, we are working in a healthcare software industry, and it's really important for us to make sure that we test it across different browsers and platforms. It's important that we cannot send out a track of software, so we were checking it on multiple browsers and platforms on Selenium Grid. The problems we were having were the test support for different kind of browser versions, like IE 8 to 11. If we have to support, we need to find out that we downgrade the browser or have multiple versions. When we move towards cloud, it's just a matter of passing the parameters, which browser version we can instantiate at runtime, and don't need to worry about if we have the support available for that or not.
That's terrific. Let's see. There's another question, and this is maybe more technical. I'm not sure if you can answer this. Is there a minimum number of tests that you queue up typically, or do you just queue up all your tests and run them all at once, and then they automatically run?
That's a good question. So it depends upon how many VMs you are utilizing with your cloud services package. So for example, if you are having 10, I'm using 10 VMs for running my test. If I send 20 tests, for execution, it queues up itself in the block of 10. So as soon as the first 10 gets over, then it will definitely take up the next queue of 10 tests. Or if you want, you can specify it in your code that you want to run 10 tests or 5 or something. TestNG by default runs 5 tests in parallel, so you can customize that in your framework.
And then another question is, was there anything special you had to do when you switched your testing from your internal grid to Soft Labs? Was there different ways that you had to manage your tests? Were there different ways that you shared results, or different ways that you did your testing? Could you comment on that?
Sure. So one of the changes is really essential is you pass the remote WebDriver instance and pass the source username and access API key. The second change, what I have to do for the test results is I need to extend the Soft Labs test API. What it does is it detects the test result called pass, fail, or undetermined, and then pulls it back to your code. So that was one of the API which I had to extend. I guess that's pretty much I did when moving towards from Grid to the cloud platform.
Terrific. Well, Anshul, we're close to the top of the hour here. I think we're running out of time. I want to thank you very much for a very insightful webinar this morning. I'd like to let everyone who's listening know that we have recorded the webinar, and we'll be sending out a recording as well as a link to the slides in a day or two once we get production done. And thank you very much for attending the webinar this morning, and we'll talk to you in the next couple of weeks when we do another webinar on Soft Labs on another interesting topic. Again, this concludes our event for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.